Okay, then I'll call a quick service. He nodded and called a flying bird service. Soon, a bird flew down from the distant sky. Did you call for our service? Is your tail number 3018? Asked the flying bird's pet tamer. Yes, he responded. Sitting on the flying bird while overlooking the ground below was quite a fascinating feeling. They reached his master's plantation very quickly. After ringing the doorbell, a young man in a white lab coat walked out and looked at him. You're Junior Subai, aren't you? Hello, I'm Liu Xinghe, our master's 9th disciple. Hello, 9th brother. Subai quickly bowed and introduced himself. This is my classmate, Chen Roshue. Master told us to come over and work today on Saturday. Liu Xinghe nodded in understanding and said, I know. Master told me that you would be coming over. He opened the guard door and walked out. Master knows you're coming over, but he's not here at the moment. I'll bring you to find him, said the young man. He then summoned his contract book, where a giant sword flew out. What kind of pet is that? Asked Chen Roshue curiously. It's a sword eagle in the form of a giant sword. The smiling Liu Xinghe jumped onto the back of his pet. Come on up. Okay. Looking curiously at the giant sword which resembled a door panel, Subai noticed that it really had an eagle pattern on its body. A shield enveloped them, and the giant sword rose with the wind, flying toward the distant mountains and forests. Brother, where are we going? Subai asked curiously. We're going to an Lan villa, replied the young man. Nodding, Subai looked down and realized they would be leaving soon to arrive at an old forest in the mountains. 9th brother, can I take the liberty to ask which disciple I am? Subai was curious. Liu Xinghe chuckled softly. You're the 10th. I didn't expect my master to accept another disciple. Thank you, brother. The youth nodded, not understanding what the other's statement meant. After flying for about 50 kilometers, Subai finally caught sight of a huge manor, which covered nearly 1,000 acres of land, from a distance. Grass and green trees surrounded the manor, and various monsters wandered aimlessly on its ground. They were obviously feeling very lazy. In the middle of the manor was a small strip of pavilions. At the top of these pavilions, a huge windmill slowly turned while a clear stream smoothly flowed on it. The gurgling water glinted and shone under the golden light of the morning sun. This was like a paradise away from the chaos of rivers and lakes outside, taking people's breath away and refreshing their spirits. This also belongs to the master. Subai was shocked. Just how rich was their master? How much does it cost? Chen Roshue's mouth widened in shock at how rich the elderly chairman was. To build a manor in such a deep mountain, he must have spent a sky-high figure, right? Of course, this manor belongs to our master, but it didn't cost him a single dime to build this. The manor isn't as simple as it seems on the surface. You'll understand it once you can see the inside. Feel free to ask me if you don't understand stuff in the future, said Liu Xinghe with a smile. Not as simple as it seems. Master didn't spend a single dime. Subai repeated those words for a while, staring carefully at the manor. Oh tilde, he suddenly sucked in a breath and turned to his senior brother in shock. The algae monster is, but the master's pet is only a monarch. Oh, I understand now. The boy came to a sudden realization. Liu Xinghe burst out laughing. Ha ha ha. You truly deserve to be our master's valued disciple. You actually saw through it, but don't tell it to anyone, it's a secret. Subai still could not calm his heart out. He could not understand what kind of big boss his master was. This manor, as well as the dozens of nearby mountains, was all one body. It was all from that terrifying monster, the algae. He suddenly understood why people said that the algae monsters could form an entire colony if they procreated. The algae monster he had seen that day was likely just a small part of its main body. Algae monster? Chen Roshue looked blankly for a moment as she pondered carefully on all the information she knew about the said pet before recalling her boyfriend's words on Wednesday night. Oh tilde, she could not help but suck in a cold breath. Once they landed on the ground, Subai looked around at the monsters getting along with one another on the grass and felt pity for them. He was wondering how these monsters could get along so well, but were they not just afraid of making mistakes? Let's go, I'll take you to our master. Liu Xinghe gestured. Nodding, the couple followed him as they carefully surveyed their surroundings yet still could not see any signs of the monster. Everything looked too real. Su Bai even pulled a grass to study it, but he really could not tell the difference. If his golden fingers pet interface had not told him that this was the algae monster, he would not have believed it. Haha. You can stop looking. This is the algae monster's camouflage, but its consciousness isn't awake. The grass and soil are both real, so you won't be able to tell the difference, said Liu Xinghe while shaking his head. He had also been surprised when he first learned that everything here was made by his master's pet, but compared to Su Bai, he had only found out after being given several hints and had only come to the realization on hindsight. The youth's wisdom made it easy to acknowledge him as his junior. Once inside, Su Bai realized that the layout and decor were completely different from what he had imagined. The furnishings did not have a classic style but rather a modern minimalist style. They finally came to a laboratory while following Liu Xinghe, and through the transparent glass window, the boy saw his master in a white coat, making medicine. Looking at his shiny, bald head, he thought that bald heads were indeed the sign of strength. Gao noticed their arrival but did not stop the experiment on hand and just continued to busy himself. Half an hour later, he finished his experiment and prepared a golden potion. After putting the medicine on the test tube rack, he opened the door and walked out. Come with me. He glanced at them. Yes, master. Su Bai nodded and hurriedly followed the old man inside. As he entered the laboratory, the huge size made him feel lost. His curiosity, however, was piqued by the absence of people inside the spacious laboratory. There were some huge transparent pillars with light green liquid squirming inside, and from time to time, some medicines would be sent out from the transparent pillars. Su Bai noticed the medicines and noted that there was at least one transparent spiral, a profound potion, among the batch. Put on these work attires. When they arrived at an empty fitting room, his master threw 2 sets of work clothes at them and motioned for them to change inside. Su Bai looked down at the grey clothes, which were similar to a school uniform, and noted that they were quite complete, even coming with socks and gloves, despite not looking anything special. Once they finished changing, Gao nodded and said, I've been a little busy these days. You two are responsible for helping clean the trash today and tomorrow. I'll tell you how to do it later. Su Bai. Chen Roshue was speechless. Were they cleaners? No wonder their clothes were so ordinary. Purple Jade and Big Demon were also dumbfounded. At this moment, the ground in the center of the laboratory suddenly cracked and a transparent elevator rose. The elderly man first walked in before glancing at them. Get in, don't dilly-dally. Okay. Su Bai nodded quickly and walked in. The elevator slowly descended, fascinating the couple with this wonderful experience. The underground level actually had a layer of huge prison cells. Most of the prisons contained captured monsters, which were crammed in together. They lay on the ground feebly, their bodies connected to a series of green tubes, which indiscriminately absorbed every strand of their spiritual power. Some of the monsters were fleshy, muscular, and without fur. Others had lava spouting from their bodies, a few had big fiery mouths on their heads, another bunch looked like whales with tentacles, several had 9 heads and bodies, and a number had mouths resembling black holes. There were so many kinds of monsters here that Su Bai could not count all of them, but the one thing they had in common was their terrifying aura. He casually looked at the data of a weak-looking blaze beast and discovered that it was a monarch. All these powerful monsters, which had been locked up, were connected to green tubes. The boy and his girlfriend were rendered shocked and speechless. The cub and Xiao Bai both shrank and shivered beside them. What kind of a ghost place was this? It was too terrifying. They were just babies. Are these the algae monster's tubes? The youth looked up at his master. Yes, it's too wasteful to kill them, so the best way is to absorb their energy and essence, explained Gao. And then where did all these monsters come from? Su Bai faintly felt that something was amiss. You'll know soon. The elevator suddenly sped up and the boy could no longer see the scene outside. Eventually, the lift sank into a white whirlpool and only stopped when they were in a different place. Looking upward, no blue sky or white clouds could be seen. Dark nebula floated one after another amid a huge planet. From time to time, Giant krakens could be seen wandering in space, each one the size of an asteroid. They would spit terrifying beams of light to eliminate the terrifying monsters emerging from the nebula. From where Subai and the others stood inside a giant transparent cube, they could see endless moss-like plants outside. There were no tidal flats, no rivers, and only purple moss occupied this plain. The only sense of vitality was the volcanoes erupting from time to time and the various monsters constantly attacking one another. The large cube containing Subai and the others and the vast area outside were all green. The plants outside were fiercely competing for the site, the green flora squeezing the niche of the purple fauna a little. Only occasionally, when monsters attacked the giant cube, would green tubes emerge from the green plants to restrain and kill them. Master, is this a world inside a space crack? The monsters in the distant nebula are all enemy invaders, he asked. Yes, but there are alternate worlds of various kinds besides this one. Ordinary space cracks will leak some fragments, but you won't be able to witness such a scene. This space crack is under my responsibility to guard. Gao nodded. I brought you here to give you insights. Don't be too concerned about the trivial gains and losses on this planet. You must become a professional pet tamer as soon as possible. Even if it's impossible, you must still become strong quickly to gain access to the real world. My trainer faction is one of the strongest factions. We're working hard to transform another world and build a truly powerful civilization. Your task today is to carry the monsters. Someone will drop some sealed monsters from the sky, and you'll need to throw them into a dozen or so large holes on the ground, classified according to this monster illustration book. Looking at the monsters, which had been piled into small hills, on the ground, Subai nodded blankly. One day on this planet is equivalent to 48 hours on our planet. I'll pick you up a day later. Food and all necessities are available here. If there's nothing, I'll return to do my experiments. Gao and instructed, then he left on board the elevator. The rest of them stood there blankly. You guys can do it slowly, I have a duty at the lab. Liu Xinghe grinned as he looked at the two. Ninth brother, are we the only ones here? There's no one else. Can I ask what level of existence are those fighting in the nebula? Subai stopped his senior and hurriedly asked that. Yes, we don't usually need so many people here. Our master's pet can handle the work itself, but he has recently transferred its main consciousness to do other things, so it needs more help from us. We should feel honored. Under normal circumstances, our level isn't even qualified to pass through the cracks in real space and come to this alternate world. As for the monsters in the nebula, those are monarchs, and their pet tamers are very advanced existences. Generally speaking, we'll only have the qualifications to know these if we acquire monarch pets. Liu Xinghe slowly explained, then he smiled at him. Anything else? Not for the time being. Subai shook his head. Okay, then. Work first and come to me if you have questions. The young man turned and walked back into the laboratory. The couple stared at the mountain of monsters in a daze.